The Amnesty International report on Libya has put the cat among the pigeons in Brussels and the European Parliament. Europe's migrant policy is flawed, and its critics sense it's time to pounce. The Socialists and Democrats have made the defence of human rights in Libya's detention centres a priority, and so has the Italian government. We've frequently asked the international community to intervene. So we don't have camps, but proper reception centres that respect the rights of these people.
We have to first see how we can help and rescue the people who are currently in detention and in slavery in Libya. There are billions going into Libya from Italy, and this is not something that happened yesterday. This has been going on for many years. So what happens? The money ends up with militias, terrorists and corrupted politicians. Is that really what we want to spend our tax money on?
This is a controversy that is not going to go away for the European Union.
Some 20,000 convicted paedophiles in Australia are no longer able to freely leave the country under new laws aimed at preventing child sex offenders from travelling to Southeast Asia.
People who are on the National Child Sex Register have committed the most serious child sex crimes, including, in some instances, against children under the age of 13. I can report that today a registered child sex offender was stopped here at the smart gates and has been prevented from travelling overseas.
Australian paedophiles are known to take cheap holidays in nearby Southeast Asia to take advantage of the sex tourism markets. All main transit lines from the Baumgarten gas hub are back in service after an explosion shut down the Austrian site. The cause of the blast is under investigation. Baumgarten is a major regional transfer node which takes gas from as far away as Russia towards Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia and Italy, its biggest recipient. The country declared a state of emergency on Tuesday as gas prices rose by a reported 215% to €75 per megawatt hour. That's its highest ever recorded level. Fears that supplies would be restricted also sent prices soaring elsewhere in Europe.
We're going to start when we said we would.
Calls for Donald Trump to step down after allegations against him of sexual harassment have reached new heights. It follows a tweet by the president against a Democrat senator, which has been described as a sexist smear. 6 female lawmakers have now called for Trump to quit due to what they call credible accusations.
Mr. President, you do not live under a different set of rules.
After Senator Kirsten Gillibrand added her name to the list, Trump lambasted her on social media, claiming she had come begging to him for campaign donations and would do anything for cash. The high-profile congresswoman promptly fired back.
It was a sexist smear attempting to silence my voice, and I will not be silenced on this issue.
Gillibrand's Democrat colleague Jackie Speer was aghast, describing what she said was a sexual innuendo as grotesque.
It took my breath away, and it represents the conduct of a person who is ill-equipped to be the President of the United States.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was forced to explain what Trump meant by the tweet at the next press briefing.
He's not alleging anything. He's talking about the way that our system functions as it is, that politicians repeatedly beg for money.
To date, 17 women have accused Trump of sexual misconduct incidents spanning decades. Around 60 cross-party lawmakers have urged Congress to investigate. Trump has called the allegations fabricated stories.
National elections in Italy look set to be held on March the 4th. The date is not yet official, but was mentioned during a preparatory meeting for the European Council. Italian media say the country's president, Sergio Mattarella, is likely to dissolve parliament at the end of this month, opening the way for elections in early March. The national election needs to be held by May at the latest. Whilst it's thought the centre-right will win most of the seats, opinion polls suggest it will not win an absolute majority, making a hung parliament the most likely outcome.
French President Emmanuel Macron is hoping the One Planet Summit will encourage wealthy countries and global companies to commit more funds to combat global warming. His first success comes after the World Bank says it will no longer finance upstream oil and gas projects after 2019.
We put together a platform called Invest for Climate that is a way to bring development finance, local, national finance, public sources and private finance, so we can close gaps when they exist. Because to aggregate funding is now critical. Low carbon transition is happening, but it is still fragmented. We have to bring everybody together in a much more powerful manner.
Developing nations say they need billions of dollars a year to switch to greener energy sources. And initiatives to encourage private sector investment are in the pipeline.
I understand the private investors that when they come and consider the investment, for example, in Africa, that they would like to have this additional reassurance. And this is what we want to provide by so-called risk guarantees, which we are going to offer in the volume of 4.1 billion euros, which simply says, come and invest. If you have any doubts, if you have any worries, the first losses are on us.
2 years after the landmark Paris Climate Accord, dozens of world leaders are back in the French capital for a summit where they're being urged to put their money where their mouth is and help poorer countries deal with the impact of climate change. President Macron hopes the world will rise to the challenge posed by the U.S. withdrawal from the deal.
The decision of President Trump just to leave the Paris Agreement was the very beginning of a new story. And I do believe that's our collective chance. It created a huge momentum.
Yet developing countries say rich nations are falling short of their pledge to provide $100 billion a year by 2020 to help them switch from fossil fuels to greener energy sources and adapt to rising temperatures and increasingly erratic weather. Meanwhile, in central Paris, environmental activists kept up the pressure with a demonstration calling for an end to all investment in oil, gas and non-renewable resources.
After 2 years of extensive operations, President Vladimir Putin has ordered the withdrawal of some Russian military personnel from Syria. Declaring mission accomplished, the leader, who paid a surprise visit to the Russian airbase in the country, told troops that the motherland is waiting for them. He insisted that although scepticism was warranted, given that 2 previous withdrawal announcements had been met with little noticeable scaling down, this time is different. Although the total defeat of ISIL is still a long way off, the Russian involvement in the 6-year Syrian civil war has shifted the balance of power in favour of President Bashar al-Assad's government. Assad praised Russia's efforts to aid him and said Syrian people would never forget the country's help. Russia hopes to convene a peace conference that would help it bypass the US as a new power broker in the Middle East.
It's time to talk, according to US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, in an apparent new diplomatic overture to North Korea. Tillerson has offered direct talks with Pyongyang without Washington issuing its normal insistence that it disarms first.
And we're ready to have the first meeting without precondition. Let's just meet, and we can talk about the weather if you want. We can talk about whether it's going to be a square table or a round table, if that's what you're excited about. But can we at least sit down and see each other face to face? And then we can begin to lay out a map.
Numerous missile and nuclear tests by North Korea have strained diplomatic relations, made worse by a war of words between President Trump and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. UN Representative Jeffrey Feltman, who recently visited Pyongyang, said he felt he had left the door ajar for talks.
Ms. Patton. They did not offer any type of commitment to us at that point. I think that they have to reflect on what we said with their own leadership. And I don't want to try to suggest I can read the minds of my interlocutors or put words in their mouth.
North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons technology has led to heavy US-led sanctions. Despite that, its leader has so far vowed to develop more missiles and to keep on testing.
Y de momento para otro espacio comercial, ahora nuestro back y deporte.